My name is Marcus, I'm 23 years old, and this is the story of how a simple phrase completely changed my professional life. It all started when I got an internship at Henderson & Associates, one of the largest corporate sales consulting companies in the United States located in Chicago. The company was known for working with million-dollar contracts, helping large corporations expand their businesses through innovative sales strategies. The founder, Robert Henderson, had built an empire from scratch, and now, at 62 years old, he was preparing his daughter Victoria to take over the company's leadership. Victoria Henderson was 31 years old, had an MBA from Harvard, and an impeccable reputation in the corporate world. She was intelligent, articulate, and had an imposing presence in any boardroom. Everyone at the company respected her, not just for being the founder's daughter, but for her genuine competence. My first day at Henderson & Associates was intimidating. The 20-story building in downtown Chicago was impressive, with its glass offices and modern decoration. I was assigned to work directly with Victoria's team, which was considered a great opportunity for any intern. Victoria received me in her office on the 18th floor. She was impeccably dressed in a navy blue suit, blonde hair perfectly arranged, and an expression that demonstrated seriousness and authority. She explained that my role would be mainly administrative, organizing documents, preparing basic presentations, conducting preliminary market research, and supporting the team in operational tasks. She made it clear that as an intern, I should observe and learn, but not interfere in decision-making processes. In the first few weeks, I did exactly what was asked of me. I organized contracts, prepared basic reports, and observed team meetings. The company was working on a particularly important project, a contract with Global Tech Industries, a technology giant that wanted to expand its operations to international markets. The contract was worth $12 million and would be the largest in Henderson & Associates' history. Victoria was personally leading the negotiations, with support from a team of 5 senior consultants. It was the type of project that could define the company's future and consolidate Victoria's position as her father's successor. During preparatory meetings, I would sit in the corner of the room, taking notes and observing the strategies being developed. Victoria's team had prepared a complex and detailed proposal, focused on a traditional market expansion approach that had worked well for other clients in the past. As the weeks passed, I began studying Global Tech Industries more deeply during my breaks. I read all available financial reports, analyzed their current operations, studied their competitors, and better understood their specific challenges. It was during this research that I began to notice something that Victoria's team might not have fully considered. Global Tech was facing a very specific problem in their international markets: cultural resistance to their technological solutions in countries with more traditional cultures. Henderson & Associates' proposal focused heavily on numbers and market penetration strategies, but didn't adequately address how to overcome the cultural barriers that were preventing Global Tech's success in markets like Japan, South Korea, and some European countries. I began developing some ideas about how to approach these cultural barriers. I researched success cases of other technology companies that had managed to overcome similar challenges, studied cultural anthropology applied to business, and developed a strategy that could be integrated into the main proposal. I tried to share these ideas with some team members, but was politely ignored. As an intern, my contributions weren't considered relevant for a project of this magnitude. The message was clear. My role was to support, not to suggest. The decisive meeting with Global Tech Industries was scheduled for a Thursday in October. It would be the final presentation of the proposal, and Global Tech executives would make their decision about which consulting company to hire. Besides Henderson & Associates, 2 other major consultancies were competing for the contract. On the eve of the meeting, tension in the office was palpable. Victoria and her team worked late, refining every detail of the presentation. I also stayed in the office, organizing documents and preparing support materials. On the morning of the meeting, Victoria was visibly nervous, although she tried to maintain her professional composure. She had bet heavily on this contract, and everyone knew that the success or failure of this project could determine her future in leading the company. The meeting was scheduled for 10 in the morning in the main conference room. Global Tech executives arrived punctually. CEO James Mitchell, International Operations Director Sarah Chen, and Market Development Director David Kumar. Victoria began the presentation impeccably. Her proposal was technically solid, well-structured, and presented with confidence. She detailed the expansion strategy, presented convincing financial projections, and demonstrated deep knowledge about the technology sector. Throughout the presentation, I remained seated at the back of the room, taking notes and observing the global tech executives' reactions. I could see that they were impressed with Victoria's professionalism and competence. But I also noticed that there was something that wasn't completely resonating. When Victoria finished her presentation, James Mitchell asked some technical questions which she answered precisely. Sarah Chen questioned some financial aspects of the proposal, and Victoria demonstrated complete mastery of the numbers. Everything seemed to be going well. Then David Kumar asked a question that changed the entire dynamics of the meeting. He asked specifically about how Henderson and Associates planned to address the cultural barriers that global tech had faced in Asian and European markets. Victoria responded generally, mentioning the importance of cultural adaptation and citing some superficial examples of how this could be implemented. But it was clear that this wasn't a main focus area of the proposal, and her answer wasn't as detailed as the previous ones. James Mitchell then commented that this had been exactly the problem they had faced with previous consultants. Technically excellent proposals, but ones that didn't adequately address the specific cultural complexities that were preventing their international success. It was at that moment that I felt I needed to do something. I knew I had information and ideas that could be valuable to the discussion, but I also knew that as an intern, it wasn't appropriate for me to speak in a meeting of this level. Victoria realized that the meeting was taking a direction that didn't favor our proposal. She tried to regain control, reiterating the strong points of our strategy, but it was evident that global tech executives were concerned about the cultural issue. Then the moment that changed everything happened. I stood up discreetly and approached Victoria, whispering that I had some relevant information about the cultural issue that Kumar had raised. Victoria looked at me with an expression of surprise and irritation. In a loud voice, so everyone could hear, she said, "Don't say anything, you're just an intern." The silence in the room was deafening. Global tech executives looked at me with curiosity, clearly intrigued by the situation. Robert Henderson, who had been observing the meeting silently, also directed his attention to me. James Mitchell then addressed me directly and asked what my perspective was on the cultural issue. Victoria tried to intervene, explaining that I was just an intern and didn't have enough experience to contribute to a discussion of this level. But Mitchell insisted, saying that sometimes the best ideas come from fresh and unconventional perspectives. He asked me to share what I had to say. With my heart beating fast, I began explaining my research about the specific cultural barriers that global tech had faced. Detail by detail, I presented case studies of other technology companies that had overcome similar challenges. I explained how cultural resistance in Asian markets wasn't just a matter of translation or superficial adaptation, but rather a fundamental need to rethink the marketing and sales approach to respect social hierarchies, collective decision-making processes, and deeply rooted cultural values. I presented a specific strategy for each problematic market based on anthropological research and documented success cases. I showed how this cultural approach could be integrated with the excellent technical strategy that Victoria had developed, creating a more robust and complete proposal. Throughout my presentation, Victoria remained silent, alternating between surprise and embarrassment. The other team members seemed shocked to see an intern taking control of such an important meeting. When I finished speaking, James Mitchell, Sarah Chen, and David Kumar exchanged significant looks. It was evident that my contributions had resonated with them in a way that the original presentation hadn't achieved. Mitchell then said that this was exactly the perspective they were looking for. He commented that they had met with several consultancies, all with technically competent proposals, but none had demonstrated such deep and practical understanding of the specific cultural challenges they faced. Sarah Chen added that the combination of technical expertise demonstrated by Victoria with the cultural perspective I had presented created a unique and very attractive proposal for their needs. David Kumar was even more direct, saying that for the first time in months of meetings with consultants, he felt confident that he had found a team that truly understood the multifaceted challenges of global tech's international expansion. Robert Henderson, who had remained quiet throughout the presentation, finally spoke up. He thanked the global tech executives for the feedback and said that Henderson and Associates was committed to providing not only technical excellence, but also innovation and diverse perspectives to solve complex problems. Mitchell then informed that although they still needed to discuss internally, they were very impressed with what they had seen, and that our proposal had stood out significantly from the others. They promised a definitive answer by the end of the week. After the global tech executives left, the room remained silent for a few moments. Victoria was visibly disturbed, not only by the embarrassing situation that had occurred, but also by how an intern had effectively saved a presentation that was losing strength. Robert Henderson asked me to accompany him to his office. Victoria tried to join us, but her father suggested we talk privately first. As we walked through the corridors, I felt a mixture of nervousness and hope. Robert Henderson's office occupied the entire corner of the 20th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of Chicago. His desk was covered with contracts, reports, and family photographs, including several of Victoria at different stages of her life. Henderson offered me a chair and sat behind his desk. He began by asking about my background, my interests, and how I had developed such specific knowledge about cultural barriers in international business. I explained that I had always been interested in cultural anthropology, and that during college I had taken elective courses on international business. I told him about my personal research on global tech and how I had identified patterns in the difficulties they faced. Henderson listened attentively, asking occasional questions to better understand my methodology and reasoning. It was clear that he was evaluating not only what I knew, but also how I thought and processed complex information. Then he asked me directly about what had happened in the meeting. I explained that there was no intention to disrespect Victoria or the company's hierarchy, but that I felt I had information that could be valuable for the proposal's success. Henderson nodded and commented that in his 40 years of business experience, he had learned that good ideas can come from anywhere, and that hierarchy should never be a barrier to valuable contributions. He then asked me a question that surprised me. What was my vision for the future of Henderson and Associates and how the company could differentiate itself even more in the competitive consulting market? I responded that I believed the future belonged to companies that could combine technical excellence with deep cultural understanding, especially in an increasingly globalized world. I suggested that Henderson and Associates could position itself as the consultancy that not only develops strategies, but also understands the cultural nuances necessary to implement them successfully. Henderson seemed impressed with my answer and said that this was exactly the direction he had envisioned for the company. He commented that globalization created enormous opportunities, but also complex challenges that required innovative and multidisciplinary thinking. The following Friday, we received the call from Global Tech. James Mitchell informed that they had chosen Henderson and Associates for the $12 million project. He specifically mentioned that the cultural perspective integrated into the technical proposal had been the deciding factor. The news spread quickly through the office. It was the largest contract in the company's history and represented not only financial success, but also recognition of Henderson and Associates as a leader in innovation in the consulting sector. Robert Henderson called a meeting with the entire team to officially announce the success. Victoria was present, but her expression was a mixture of joy for the company's success and discomfort with how everything had happened. Henderson began his speech thanking the entire team for their hard work and dedication. He specifically praised Victoria for her technical leadership and meticulous preparation of the base proposal. Then he addressed me and said that my contribution had been fundamental in securing the contract. He announced that effective immediately, I would be promoted from intern to junior consultant with corresponding salary and responsibilities. More importantly, Henderson announced that I would be assigned to work directly on implementing the global tech project, specifically leading the cultural aspects of the expansion strategy. After the meeting, Victoria approached me privately. She apologized for how she had treated me during the global tech meeting and acknowledged that her reaction had been inappropriate and counterproductive. She explained that she had felt threatened and insecure when she realized I had valuable information that she hadn't considered. She admitted that her comment about me being just an intern was motivated by wounded pride and fear of appearing incompetent in front of her father and clients. Victoria then surprised me with a proposal. She suggested that we work together on the Global Tech project, combining her technical expertise with my cultural perspective. She recognized that this collaboration could not only ensure the project's success, but also establish a new standard for the company's future contracts. I accepted her proposal, and in the following weeks we developed a very effective professional partnership. Victoria was excellent at technical analysis and business strategies, while I contributed cultural insights and innovative approaches for implementation in international markets. The Global Tech project was an extraordinary success. In 6 months, we managed to help the company overcome the cultural barriers that had prevented their expansion for years. The results were so impressive that Global Tech renewed our contract for 2 more years, increasing the total value to $28 million. My success on the Global Tech project opened doors to opportunities I had never imagined. Other clients began specifically requesting my participation in projects involving international expansion and cultural challenges. Robert Henderson called me for a conversation 6 months after the Global Tech project began. He offered me a promotion to senior consultant with a salary of $120,000 annually, plus profit sharing on projects I led. More importantly, Henderson invited me to develop a new company division focused specifically on cultural consulting for international business. It would be an opportunity to create something completely new and establish Henderson and Associates as a pioneer in this area. Victoria fully supported the creation of this new division and suggested that we work together to integrate cultural expertise into all company projects, not just international ones. 1 year after that meeting that changed my life, the cultural consulting division I led had become one of Henderson and Associates' most profitable. We had contracts with 15 multinational companies and a waiting list of interested clients. Victoria and I developed a unique methodology that combined traditional technical analysis with applied anthropological research. Our approach became so recognized in the sector that we began receiving invitations to present at international conferences. The family dynamics in the company also changed significantly. Robert Henderson was clearly proud of both Victoria and me, and began talking about a future where company leadership would be shared, taking advantage of our different expertise. Victoria, who had initially seen my rise as a threat, came to see me as a valuable partner. She frequently commented that our collaboration had made both of us better and more complete professionals. 2 years after the incident in the meeting, Henderson and Associates had become the most sought-after consultancy for international expansion projects. Our integrated approach of technical excellence and cultural sensitivity had established a new standard in the sector. My trajectory from ignored intern to leader of an innovative division became a known story in the consulting world. Universities began inviting me for lectures on the importance of diversity of perspectives in the corporate environment. During one of these lectures at Northwestern University, a student asked me what had been the most important lesson I learned from this entire experience. I replied that I learned that competence and value are not limited by titles or hierarchical positions. I explained that when someone has something valuable to contribute, it's the responsibility of both that person and the organization to find ways to channel that contribution productively. I also emphasized that Victoria's comment about me being just an intern had been ironically a catalyst for demonstrating that labels and assumptions can be limiting and counterproductive. Victoria, who was present in the audience that day, asked to compliment my answer. She said she had learned that true leadership isn't about protecting territory or maintaining rigid hierarchies, but about recognizing and nurturing talent wherever it appears. She publicly admitted that her initial reaction had been motivated by insecurity, and that working with me had taught her to be a more effective and inclusive leader. 3 years after that transformative meeting, Robert Henderson announced his gradual retirement. He named Victoria as CEO of the company, but also created a position of Vice President of Strategic Innovation, specifically for me. The shared leadership structure we implemented became a model studied by other companies. Victoria led traditional operations and technical growth, while I focused on innovation, international expansion, and development of new methodologies. Our professional partnership had evolved into genuine friendship and mutual respect. Victoria frequently joked that I had saved not only that specific meeting, but had also helped save the company from becoming obsolete in an increasingly globalized market. 5 years after starting as an intern, I was leading a team of 25 consultants specialized in cultural and international issues. Our division generated more than $15 million in annual revenue and had established Henderson and Associates as a global leader in culturally integrated consulting. The original project with Global Tech continued to be one of our biggest successes. The company had successfully expanded to 12 new international markets, and our methodology had been replicated in dozens of other projects. James Mitchell, Global Tech's CEO, became a vocal advocate of our approach and frequently recommended us to other companies. He used to tell the story of how an intern had identified the missing piece in their expansion strategy. During an industry conference, Mitchell introduced me as the young man who transformed a potentially embarrassing moment into one of the most successful business decisions in Global Tech's history. Reflecting on this entire journey, I realized that that moment in the meeting when Victoria said I was just an intern had been a turning point not only for my career, but for the entire culture of Henderson and Associates. The company had learned that innovation and excellence can come from unexpected sources, and that creating an environment where all voices are valued is not only politically correct, but also strategically intelligent. Victoria and I developed policies to ensure that future interns and junior employees had clear channels to contribute ideas and insights. We created a reverse mentoring program, where senior professionals learned from younger and more diverse perspectives. Today, Henderson and Associates is recognized not only for its technical excellence, but also for its inclusive and innovative culture. We are regularly ranked as one of the best companies to work for, especially for young professionals. My story became an example of how moments of tension and conflict can be transformed into opportunities for growth and innovation. What began as public embarrassment became the catalyst for profound organizational transformation. Victoria frequently says that that meeting was one of the most important moments of her career, not because of the contract we got, but because of the lessons about leadership and humility she learned. For me, that experience confirmed that having the courage to speak when you have something valuable to contribute can change not only your own trajectory, but also positively impact an entire organization. The phrase, "Don't say anything, you're just an intern," became a constant reminder in our company culture about the importance of never underestimating anyone's potential for contribution, regardless of their position or experience. Today, when I see new interns arriving at Henderson and Associates, I always remember how I felt in that meeting, and I make sure to create an environment where they feel valued and encouraged to contribute from day one. Because I learned that sometimes the best ideas come from people everyone expects to remain silent, and that true leadership is about creating spaces where those voices can be heard and valued.